And we're back, another episode, Montrose TV. We got a really cool guest, Peter Miller, Purple Hills community. Tell us a little about yourself.
My name's Peter, and I've been at this cannabis thing for close to 12 years. And it's brought us to a great spot with Purple Hills, which all our energy is behind, and we're having a lot of fun with.
Nice, yeah, man. And like a lot of, what's unique about Purple and the whole community kind of concept is, first and foremost, Creemore, Ontario, local homies, right? So that's always really important to us that we support our local businesses. But not too many people understand that you guys are probably like the #1 processing, I'd say. And what goes into this kind of regenerative farm and the inputs, it's so unique. And, I don't want to mess up the explanation. I was there, about a month or two ago, and it's just crazy what I saw, that you have these rolling hills. And tell us a little bit about the farm.
Yeah, it is super unique. I've been to dozens of facilities, legacy, legal, West Coast of the United States, across Canada, Europe. And one of the really cool things is that no two are alike. There's so much to be figured out, so much to learn, so much stuff that's compliance driven, so it's a little wonky, or driven by the climate or the unique situation. So it's fun, and there's going to be probably another decade of a lot of stuff being figured out. No one can say this is the way to do it like you could with corn.
Yeah.
But in that mix, I think Purple Hills is like extra unique because we have an operation that from the soil all the way through to the finished product, there's a lot going on and there's a lot of integration, and you couldn't recreate those variables in really any other environment. So as you mentioned, the rolling hills, the area that we're in, it's actually referred to as Purple Hills. So Purple Hills is a geographic reference. It's not a D12 reference. Yeah. There's a lot of people thought who were around when Purple Hills, the song came out like 20 years ago. And that topography, that microclimate, the combination of the sun, the spring water, the soil, the different variables we have make it unique right out of the gate. And that would be the same for any outdoor greenhouse sort of type environment. But our operation incorporates an animal sanctuary where we're using manures to amend soil, and we're building compost, and we're doing things that aim to increase soil health and productivity over time, which economically is good because you're not spending a ton of money every year on nutrient and soil, and you're not then salting out your soil and making it unproductive over time. And right on the same spot where we're growing, we're taking the finished product to processing, a few hundred yards away for things like solventless concentrate. So you're literally taking your manure amended and compost amended and built up soil. You're harvesting it. You're taking it to the freezer. When you're ready, you're taking packs out of the freezer, putting it into ice water for agitation and extraction and pressing. And from the horses to the truck that goes to the OCS, there's a lot of care, and complexity isn't the word, because a lot of it is very simple conceptually. The complexity is in just nature and the natural systems that are being leveraged that we're not creating, we're just moving with them. So complexity is not the right word operationally, because we're taking really simple concepts, but there's no way, as I mentioned, that you could recreate that.
So you guys do solventless?
Yeah, solventless. We sell a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Edibles is the next frontier for us.
Nice.
But effectively, anything inhalable we have covered, from affordable concentrates like shatter through much more expensive concentrates like live rosin,
That Terra Nova live rosin. Yeah.
Yeah, and Terra Nova is also a geographic reference in that there's a tiny little hamlet 10 minutes down the road called Terra Nova, but it also means new earth, new land, and that's a reference to us building up that new topsoil through our practices and being connected with the earth. And so the Terra Nova product line rotates flavors as we find new strains and we want to mix stuff up a little bit. But Terra Nova is a perfect example of a product line that you just couldn't recreate. There's some really good rosins, there's some really good concentrates in the market. And I think one of the cool things about the industry is that you will never have a winner-take-all producer environment because there's so much variability. There's things that other people do that we absolutely couldn't do. So the same way you couldn't recreate what's happening at Purple Hills certainly couldn't recreate what's happening in the Kootenays or, you know, in some super sophisticated indoor
micro,
wherever the case may be. Yeah, so I think it's really cool that there's that tapestry, that there's a lot of opportunities for people to find their niche, and that what we're trying to achieve with Purple Hills Presents is to showcase some of these things that we don't do, that we can't do, and that other people are doing really well.
Yeah, and I guess that goes to part of the whole community type of deal. So tell us more about, you know, the whole community aspect, because people may get confused, but when they see that purple bag, you know, they see those purple bins. Explain like the whole community concept to us.
Yeah, the idea of community was to leverage the power of this network of growers and operators to try to compete with some of the scaled folks that in some cases have put like literal billions into their business. And to compete in that realm, if you're a micro cultivator or you're an independent like us that generally isn't massive, the only way to do that would be to pool resources. And I'm not talking really like financial resources, it's just effort and making sure there's efficiency. So for example, if you are a micro cultivator and you have a customer for your flower and the trim that you produce in the trim process is so small in terms of quantity that you don't really have the scale to negotiate with the big processors. You don't necessarily have SKUs to put that in market as a hash or something else. That would be an example where we could pool that material with a lot of other small operators and create a shatter, for example, and put out a shatter that is very competitively priced, not because we're upside down financially to do it, or that, you know, we're doing something like financially manipulative. It's just because you have a bunch of people that don't have layers of managers and expensive overheads.
Lean, that startup
just putting
scrappy.
It together and doing something like that. So that was the idea, is how do you take small operators that have a home for, you know, one type of product, but don't want to waste every part of the plant that otherwise you may do just because of the things I mentioned. And so we took that concept to a lot of things like pre-rolls, distillate, vapes, shatter, and we thought that would be like an interesting way to delineate. So the Purple Hills stuff initially was just like a top to bottom pre-more Purple Hills operation, and the community care of Purple Hills conceptually being, you know, material coming from the community to Purple Hills, from Purple Hills to the community of consumers. It was product that had a collaborative supply chain. And a lot of the folks in that supply chain were reticent about being recognized, because if your product winds up in a bag that is quite affordable, and then you have your own product in the market that's more expensive, even if it's not the same thing, there's nervousness there. So the idea with Purple Hills Presents was, let's put out top shelf, let's draw attention to the cultivator, and we're not worried that a competitor, so to speak, will try to poach the supply chain. I mean, I think that's inevitable. People are going to figure stuff out. Like, nothing is that big of a secret
anymore
in life, like people with the internet. So we're
not like back in the day where it's just like everyone's top secret, you know, and everyone's running away. But and
a lot of these smaller operators, particularly as retail consolidates, don't necessarily have access to a lot of shelves that we've sort of earned our way into over time, over a bunch of years.
Yeah.
So the concept with Purple Hills Presents is you put something out that's really high quality, that features 2 or 4 strains in the first 2 products from an independent. We produce a bunch of content to go along with it. For the first month or so, it's in the market without a lot of discussion about where it came from, so we don't skew and bias anybody. Month 2, which we're now entering, just put a big spotlight on that grower. Hopefully, maybe breathe a little life into the SKU itself, but more importantly, draw attention to the products they might have in the market.
Yeah.
And then you kind of help, prop each other up.
Yeah, that's amazing. And like, you mentioned being around the market for a while, and not too many people know the history of the Millers and Peter Miller. So, tell us a little about like your family history and what that means to Creemore.
My family took a boat from Ireland to New York at the end of the potato famine.
Nice.
So we're talking like 1852, and worked their way up to Creemore over the next few years. And from about 1860 to the present, have just been farming there continuously.
Jeez.
So there's a lot of history in the area.
Yeah.
And I think that helped us when it came time to get building permits for the facility, for example, back in 2013. It hasn't helped in some ways. Like, the municipality was like a retail opt-out.
Right.
So I was like, come on guys, let's do a farm gate, let us do this, let us do that. So it's not to say that they're like, let's make Purple Hills be as successful as possible. But there was a trust element there that when we went down this path, we were gonna see it through, and that it would be good for the village, and it wouldn't be something that was just kind of like a drive-by financial opportunity, which some of these operations ended up being. And there's a lot of dead facilities just, now kind of an abandoned site in certain places. So we proved that was the case. We've been at it now since 2012. Nice. So we've been a great employer. We've spent as much of the money that we could on construction and operations as locally as possible.
Was it a fight? Was it a fight having to deal with, because so long ago, over a decade ago, things were completely different, right? And I know we're always in this fight, right? So how was it dealing with the regulators? And
so Creemore was the easy part, because I was able to call the mayor at his house. Nice. And his wife called him from his garage. He was working on one thing or another, and he just came to the phone, and I told him what I wanted to do. And his first question was like, is that legal? Can you even do that? And I was like, I'm gonna send you the regulations. This is a draft set of regulations. We're talking, I think, late 2012. They were just published. Nice. Or the guidance document was published. The draft regulations came out early 2013. But that was like kind of the easy part, the local municipality. Health Canada had a guy whose job it was to encourage people to apply. They didn't think enough people would be interested in becoming licensed producers. So he was kind of like gassing people up, like, you should apply. There's not going to be a limit. You could do this. And when I told him our backstory, he really, I think, liked and appreciated the fact that it was an agricultural kind of family.
Yes.
At that time, I was actually working in technology. I wasn't involved in the farm operations. But I had a clean sort of track record, so to speak. And there's the agricultural piece, and he just made me feel like it was like a layup, which it absolutely wasn't going to be. And it wasn't that, as an entrepreneur, you have to be naive and you hear what you want to hear. So he wasn't saying anything he shouldn't have said. He was actually pretty careful with his words, but as an entrepreneur, you're just like, cool, SOPs. I've never heard of an SOP. I'll figure that one out. Great. Quality assurance. Yeah, of course, it's going to be fire. Like, we're not going to put out low quality. We'll do what we can. And so I put together a really amateurish submission, because the application was like I feel like it was like 12 pages, fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
But I think a good application then had like 200 pages of appendices, like draft SOPs and site plans and this and that. So I put out like, you know, the kind of application probably a 6th grader would have put together, and then quickly realized that that's not going to cut it. So I resubmitted with some consultants from the pharma world and the food world, kind of making sure that it looked like the kind of document Health Canada was used to seeing. It was a scrappy team in those days. It was on the license, it was myself, my now wife, my cousin, my aunt, my uncle, and our QA person who was an assistant professor at U of T.
Like real family operation.
Yeah, it looked super clean because like, I think my uncle, it was suspiciously clean because his home address hadn't changed since 1955.
That's crazy.
You know, it's like, have you been out of the country in the last 10 years? It's like a blank slate. So if anything, they were like, but it was all straight. And so we worked our way through the Health Canada process. By 2014, we got licensed. We were lucky timing-wise that we got through a lot of the hurdles before there was a bit of a shakeup. In those days, the home growers were suing the government on the grounds that they should be able to continue growing under their medical registration document.
ACMPR days.
It was early, it was so MMAR goes back to early 2000s when a lot of activism led to a successful argument that effectively medicine is a human right in Canada and cannabis is medicine, so cannabis should be a right. And a lot of people don't appreciate what that took. And we're going back, I think the first battle was won in about 2001 or 2, but a couple of years later, another fight was successful that allowed people to grow their own medicine. Because their options at that time were effectively just to buy from a single government licensed entity growing in like a mine shaft and selling milled flour that was all irradiated. And I don't think that was their fault necessarily. That was just the confines of what they had to do. So that allowed home growing. And then that became by, 2012, I think around 40,000 folks that could grow at home or designate someone to grow for them. And you could pool a few licenses together and develop a bit of scale. And so the government at that time was trying to, I think, eradicate that. Because they were like, effectively, this is what is supplying Canada's, legacy market. And the good thing about that was it was very mom and pop. It wasn't, from what I could tell, some like big organized crime driven thing. It really was like people it was cannabis first and it happened to be illegal. It wasn't like people that were in it for the crime. So in that way, I think Canada had a unique market, but the government was like, nah, this isn't gonna do. We're gonna shut these guys down. We're gonna license a few buddies and they're going to pick up, the whole market. And the timeline was kind of wild. Like basically what was supposed to happen is in June of 13, the regulations were going to become law. And in June of 14, they were going to be the only law and the home grow was going to be wiped out. So that wasn't going to happen in a year. And by Halloween of 2013, like 3 companies were licensed. So, and they were not big operations. And one of them was that old company that was growing for the government for like a decade. So really it was like 2 companies that were new. And by the winter, there were only a few more. So the home growers won the fight, which is what should have happened. We're allowed to continue to grow. And then Health Canada kind of put a bit of a pause on licensing. So there was a period of time where there weren't a lot of licenses coming online. Trudeau wasn't a serious contender for anything. But we got licensed and we were able to raise a few bucks. Everything to that point, I just scraped together with like a home equity line and enough money to make deposits, but not enough money to like finish the thing because it became like a bit of a beast.
It's massive.
And then a lot of like, oh crap, like who do we even sell this to? So we consolidated with another group and then that group had a lot of financial connections, was able to raise a bunch of money. And for sort of the 2014 through 2015 period, we had the cash to kind of build out a scaled operation for that time. Now it would be considered pretty small. And then Trudeau won in 15, and that really kicked off what became like 5 years of like a tulip mania type environment. Just crazy financial speculation, investment. It was bonkers.
Yeah, it was the pump.
It was crazy.
The greatest pump.
It was crazy.
Of Canadian history.
Yeah, it might have been one of the craziest financial occurrences in Canadian history, because it was the perfect storm of like a story that was really easy to understand for like a retail investor, you know, getting a call from a broker being like, have you ever heard of marijuana?
Yeah.
Everyone likes it. Only a few people are going to be licensed. It's the only federally legal, you know, country in the world.
In the world, yeah.
You know, and everyone was like, yeah, we're all going to become trillionaires. And that story, you know, played out for a few years, and valuations were absolutely bonkers and nothing made sense. So it was on the tail end of that we built Purple Hills, when the industry started to see a lot of distress. And we figured at that time, we were just white labeling for a lot of different folks, but there was a lot of challenges. There were a lot of failures, and we thought, if we're gonna fail, let's fail doing something we love and believe in. And we can control our destiny a bit better if we're putting out a product under our brand that we care about, that we like. And if that works, you know, fantastic. And so over the next few years, as Purple Hills grew kind of inch by inch, and a lot of our white label customers either failed or we, you know, politely helped them find a new home, the Purple Hills product line became all we did at our licensed producer. And over those years, as our financial partners and the shareholders of AgriFarm lost their interest, or just, you know, generally were fed up with the whole industry, we bought them all out. So, so over the course, and buying them out means like, here's $1, we'll take on all the liabilities and put everyone out of their misery. Like, it wasn't some big, I mean, it wasn't $1, but it was like,
it wasn't a big exit, everyone.
No, it was like, we got very lucky, like in the early phase when everything went nutty, but anything we made was leveraged multiple times and put all back into this thing, which was pretty unique.
Yeah, and I mean, like, we grow the most fire globally, right? Like, and we deserve to be the global leaders. And like, you know, really, you guys are growing LSO. I know everybody talks about living soil organics and things like that. And it's so crazy how far the regulations have come, but that fight still continues, right? And is there any kind of expansion globally for you guys, or like, what's kind of like the next step for the Purple brand?
Yeah, like the global side that you touched on is kind of crazy. Because as Germany, Australia, as these legal markets have come online, I think unsurprisingly to the cannabis consumer, the demand has been huge. But that financial turmoil I discussed resulted in a lot of operations being shut down and facilities leaving the market while these international markets started booming has created a weird moment in time right now where a lot of the top shelf is just leaving Canada.
We see it. We know it.
You can
know who, like,
if you can
sad.
make
it's sad.
It is, but if you're a micro cultivator and you can make $4 a gram shipping something to Germany, or you can make $1.50 a gram selling it domestically, you got to survive. So I don't begrudge them that, but then there's like bigger operators with a lot of financial scale who are seeing those dynamics too, and so at the moment, you've got international pulling a lot of the good flower out of the Canadian market. And then on the extraction and vape side, inputs went from basically being free, like trim, even whole bud that was like 2 years old, from some of these really giant LPs who couldn't sell it, was available for like a penny a gram. And this is stuff where they would have put $1 to a gram into making it. And so if you were a big extractor making a lot of distillate, your input cost was basically free. Now that material's gone. A lot of the flower's leaving the country. So there's a lot of, there's a price squeeze. And so I think 2025 is going to be maybe the first year since the beginning of legal cannabis where everything consumed by maybe, mid 2025 was grown in the last year, which sounds logical, like that should
Yeah.
always have been the case, but there's a lot of vapes, particularly from material that's like 3-4 years old, that has artificially brought the price pretty low. So I think we're seeing the beginnings of some price increases. A lot of companies that were just brands but weren't growers and they weren't processors. They were just like hiring each part of the supply chain out. There's not enough margin to do that at this point. So I think you're kind of seeing the real ones emerge and hopefully be successful. And it's taken a long time, but it's also kind of logical from like a supply demand macroeconomic perspective.
Yeah, and like you would know, like even how you explain everything. Like I see you on Reddit and things like that, and you're really there for the community, right? You're really there for the people. So
I try,
So if there's one thing that you want to tell the folks out there from Peter Miller, what do you want to let them know?
I mean, it's a grind. So there's no magic bullet. There's no like tagline. This is what makes Purple Hills the best. We just have a good team, small team, working their butts off every single day, going on a decade for some of them. And our hope is that we can stay focused on what we do. I didn't really answer your question about what Purple Hills is going to do internationally and whatnot. We'll stay committed to our domestic customers. If there's opportunities internationally to do what we do that's kind of unique, we'll pursue those too. But we're going to focus on the people that helped us get here, which is the Ontario consumer and other pockets of the country. And we just appreciate everyone's support, because this is not. This is a get rich slow scheme, maybe. Right now it's break even or die trying. That's not the sexiest tagline. But we'd invite everyone to come out and see what we do. We do tours all summer long. We've seen hundreds of bud tenders, and I can tell you about what we do, but seeing it is really powerful. You were out a couple of weeks ago, got a bit of a glimpse. And so I would just say that this is a tough market, but it's one we believe in, one that isn't going anywhere. And the consumer and the bud tenders ultimately decide who lives and dies by the choices they're making as consumers. So, get educated, go on the Reddit forums, go on social media, ask tough questions. As you mentioned, I'm out there. It's just my full name. Like I'm not hiding. And sometimes there's some critical feedback, and that's good. Like I don't want to just see comments that they love what we do, because then we're not learning. So even though there's some aggressive language sometimes, there's always something in there, unless it's just a troll that works for a competitor, but that's rare. I feel like most of the time, even when people are pissed off, there's a real, even though it's emotional, there's a good bit of criticism in there that deserves like an answer and some follow-up. So we really appreciate what everyone's done to help us, to tell us when we've gone off track. We'll keep grinding to try to deliver, and if we can do that well, then hopefully we live to fight another decade.
So what else are you guys coming out with? I know we got a couple of new drops. We're huge on new drops here. You guys have a party. So what do you got coming up?
I'm a bad self-promoter in terms of the actual
We gotta
SKUs.
get Johnny Bongos right now. Johnny,
So one of the things that's really cool that's coming out in a few months are our edibles. We wanted to come to edibles with something that was authentic and unique to the farm. So they're gonna be sweetened with our own honey, which is from our hives that live in our medical cannabis garden. We're medical growers too, have been for a long time. And you've got our flower gardens, our veggies, our medical cannabis, the hives all commingled. So we're really stoked on that. It'll be a live.
It's like good LSO grown organic stuff. This is gonna be amazing.
It'll be a live resin infused, honey sweetened, pectin-based organic fruit puree, orangeade live resin gummy.
Orangeade too, amazing.
Orangeade live resin in the gummy. So that's coming out in January. We have some Purple Hills Presents drops. I think you'll see a lot more of that over the course of the next year. We're really focusing on trying to tell that story. We built a pretty big in the cannabis world social media presence just organically by showing what we do, and we're all ducking the shadow ban like everybody else, but we've been really lucky to get the support we have, so we want to use that platform to shine a light on other producers. So we have the current Purple Hills Presents two bags, a 2x7 and a 4x3.5. Two half ounces, and we've got another one that's specifically coming out co-branded out of the gate with Victoria Cannabis Company out in BC,
yeah,
which we're stoked on. They produce incredible
good
product, and they have a great story to tell, and we're really excited to help tell that story. We have a Purple Hills Presents Ounce coming out. The first bag is from a micro cultivator in Saskatchewan, which we'll showcase as well. And beyond that, like finding new flavors from 2024, we're always growing new stuff. We're always seeing what it does in extraction, and there'll be at least a couple winners from that we'll bring to market. So we have a pretty broad portfolio. It's got something for everybody.
Yeah.
And we just appreciate people taking little nibbles on the edges to find what they like, and hopefully over time building up that relationship. And the support is what allows us to exist. So we appreciate you. We appreciate other independents like you, and even some of the big chains.
Yeah.
One of the giants just started picking up our product with no phone call, no requests for any sort of like payment.
Speaks for itself.
So it's really cool to see now that the OCS data actually allows us to see who's buying the product. So that's the only reason I know that. And so things are going to continue to mature in the industry. Things are going to sophisticate a little bit. We hope that the industry doesn't lose kind of the fun, scrappy energy from the beginning. And I think that one of the benefits of the economy right now, from a financial perspective, being a little tough, is that you're only going to survive if you have a real offering, real product, a real value, business, a real thing. And international is going to help some of the smaller operators survive. So I think as tough as it is, I think it's the most optimistic I've ever been for Purple Hills in the sector this whole time.
Amazing, man. It's good to hear. There you go. There you guys have it. Peter Miller, Purple Community. It was awesome having you here, brother.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.
Appreciate it.